Welcome to the Atomic Impact Podcast. I'm your host, Jason Osborne. And on this podcast, we interview successful business owners for them to share atomic, impactful lessons that they've learned throughout the course of their business. Share them with us so we can all learn. As always, this show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects. We use this method of about 26 qualified leads and sales calls in 10 days without any ad spend, outreach, endless social media posting, or any of those old, ineffective traditional marketing methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. The link to that will be in the show notes below. But on today's show, our special guest is Bob Judson. He is the owner of Leading for Life, where he provides leadership development training through keynote speeches, interactive training workshops, and executive coaching. So, Bob, welcome to the show today. I want to start off with a question that I always love to start off with, which you've already heard because I forgot to press record earlier, but I'll ask it to you. So if you were able to somehow go back in time to when you started your first business, but knowing what you know now, what would you do differently in the first 12 months?
Well, first of all, thanks very much for having me, Jason. Really appreciate the opportunity to be on the show. I mean, I guess a bit of context is important in answering your question because I haven't had a kind of traditional business career, if you like. I spent the first 34 years of my working life in the Air Force, so flying airplanes and then doing a lot of senior leadership jobs as I climbed up the career ladder. And I then went from there into the corporate world and worked for Deloitte for a bit. So when I jumped from Deloitte 7 and a bit years ago to start my own business, I had all that kind of back pocket experience already in the bag, I guess. Interestingly, as I was leaving the Air Force, quite a few of my friends were saying, "Oh, you should do a portfolio thing. You should start your own business up and go down that route." And I'm very glad I didn't do that because I think I needed the experience of going in and working for a big organization, seeing how that worked, getting into the world of profit and loss because I hadn't been in that with all the military time I'd done. So that was already the kind of learning curve that I was on. I think when I started, I had no shortage of people who were able to provide me with great advice and help, and that was really, really good and very useful. And I think it's the most important thing to do is to make sure you've got good soundings. Don't take too much risk too quickly. Don't have too much risk appetite and get yourself into a world of pain because that can be a challenge. And make sure you're, I guess, confident in what you're offering. That's been one of my learning curves along the way. I think I was spread a bit too thin and a bit too broad initially, and I've tightened up what I've done over time, and I think that's definitely valuable.
Yeah, definitely. What were some of the key pieces of advice you said? You said surround yourself with good people. What were some of the good bits of advice that you were given when you did start your career or business, rather?
I think the most useful one was actually from a recruiter contact of mine. He said, if you're going to do what you're going to do, then make sure you try and have a kind of keystone client who is going to be there pretty reliably for you. If you're running your own thing, as I do, very much it's just me really, then having someone that you know is going to help pay the bills is really important. And try and then build everything else around that. And luckily, I've been able to do that. I do a lot of work with Deloitte University. They're a really valuable client of mine, and that's been great. And around that, I've built a broader set of clients, which really helps. And I think to not have that just makes that really uncomfortable because the biggest challenge that I still feel, to be honest, and is a constant work in progress, is the pipeline. It's about, particularly when it's just you, then actually maintaining that pipeline in a healthy condition and ensuring you've got enough stuff going in the top to then produce actual work at the bottom. That is definitely a challenge, and it's always going to be up and down and hit and miss, and sometimes it's more hit and miss, and sometimes the other way around. So that's the thing to be really aware of, I think.
Yeah, and you've hit on something that's very common, and I think sometimes people just think they're the only ones that feel that way, or that once you get to a certain point, you never have that issue again. But you do have those ebbs and flows. So, what are some of the things that you do to help mitigate and balance out as much as you can through those ups and downs to get that pipeline consistently filled?
It's a great question, and I think it's one of the things that I need to drink some of my own Kool-Aid on because I talk about this stuff with some of the work that I do in terms of business skills and business development. Because I think it is about outreach. It's about making sure you keep as broad an aperture as you can in terms of the contacts you've got, have a mixture of obviously a good contact book with lots of warm leads, and also starting to increase that network, build more, more into it all the time, having a good website that is going to show what you do and showcase what you do, so people can find you and know what you do, and then finding a way to contact you easily, I think, is also really important. And I'm literally just in the process as we record this of completely revamping my own website with with a different company, and for exactly that reason, because I just think it needs to say more about what I do. It needs to be more relevant to what I do, and be more up to date. And things like LinkedIn, great tool. I mean, it's a fantastic tool for contacts and outreach and all the rest of it. But keeping your own profile up to date, making sure you've got regular stuff on there that people can know who you are and immediately latch onto you, because it's I mean, particularly in my kind of world, doing leadership development, there's a lot of people doing it. I mean, it's a competitive marketplace, as with lots of other things. So you need to do something that hopefully makes you a bit distinctive and makes people reach out to you.
Yeah, yeah. On that point, which I think is a very good one, you got to be able to make yourself stand out, because every market is competitive. I always find it really interesting when people go, "Oh, this is too competitive. I'm going to go into a different market." It's like, well, yeah, the only reason you don't think it's competitive because you're not in that world yet. Once you get into it, you're going to realize, quote unquote, everybody else does it as well. So what are some things that you've done to separate yourself so you don't just fall into that, oh, you're just a leadership development person, but where you actually are something a bit different now?
Yeah, another good question. I mean, I think it's a generalization, but I think you can largely divide leadership training into two camps. There are a lot of people who've done it, and or who've done a lot of leading, and they've been in organizations where they've had big opportunities to lead things, and whether those are big, small, or a mixture of the two is irrelevant. They've got practical experience of leading things. When I, for example, I lean heavily on my Air Force career, but also on my corporate career, and that's one of my points of distinctiveness, is that I've done both. I've been a senior guy. I was an Air Vice Marshal, a 2-star general, if you like, in the Air Force. I led some very big organizations there. I had a big base in the UK, and then a very big base in Afghanistan, 25,000 people, 170 airplanes at Kandahar Airfield. So you get tremendous practical experience from doing that, which is incredibly helpful. I think the other camp is there are people out there who are much more academically focused on leadership. And I'm not decrying that at all. I think it's really useful. I read an awful lot of leadership books and input myself, and I value that tremendously. But I think there's a balance to be struck between knowing about leadership and writing about leadership and actually having led stuff. Because there's quite a lot of people in the academic space who, when you test them a little bit about it, they haven't really led much at all. And that's a bit suboptimal for me. I think you need to have the right kind of portfolio that's also relevant to your client base, right? You want to be talking something that is is entirely appropriate to what they need, and keeping it up to date as well.
Yeah, totally. Really, really good advice. One of the other things I love to talk about, Bob, is normalizing the challenges we have in business, because we all have them. It can feel very isolating sometimes. We can also feel like we're the only person in the world that's ever gone through this particular challenge. It's not true, but it feels that way. So I always like to ask this question because I think it's just helpful. What's the number one biggest business challenge that you've gone through so far? Can be in any area of the business, but what's the number one biggest challenge you've gone through business wise, and what's the lesson that you learned from that?
I think the biggest challenge has been the pipeline. I think I was a bit naive when I left Deloitte, in terms of what I was going to do and how easy or difficult it was going to be. And I've been too often have taken my eye off the ball a little bit in terms of making sure that I was continuing to fill the hopper and continue to put stuff in and get stuff out the bottom, and not being systematic enough about it. I think you need to have some tools. You need to invest in a bit of advice and invest potentially in a few software tools that are going to help you do that. And I've definitely done that now, and I'm moving much more in the right direction with it. But I think the kind of ensuring that you've got some continuity of what's coming up in the future is really important, not least in a world where training, which is what I essentially do, is a pressure point for a lot of organizations. It's one of the things they give up very quickly when times are tough for them. It's the first thing they divest from what they're doing, and you need to compete with that. And so that's definitely a factor. I think brand building is a really important feature of trying to avoid that. It's one of the reasons that I host my own podcast. I started that 3 years ago. I do a Leading for Life podcast, which is, I think has been really useful just in terms of getting out there, getting people knowing who you are and having some visibility. Because without that, you're a needle in a haystack.
Yeah, definitely. Absolutely agree with you. Well, over the next, say, 2 to 3 years of the business, what are your goals? What would you like to achieve?
I'd continue. I mean, I've done a long stint in the military and then some corporate stuff on top of that. So I'm getting towards the twilight of my time for sure. I mean, I'm very much in the giving back stage of my life, and that's one of the reasons I do what I do, because I think I've got a lot of lessons, a lot of experience that I can hopefully share useful tips, techniques, and ideas and thoughts to people who are wanting them. So I'm aiming to build on that. I'm certainly aiming to do more on the speaking side of what I do, as well as the workshops and the coaching, because I think the three are very complementary, three legs of a stool, if you like. It's very, very useful to have keynotes at the outset that basically set your stall out to a big audience. You can get a message out to a lot of people quite quickly, even if it's not a physically big audience, but a diverse audience within an organization. And then start focusing in, if they want to do that, on more detailed stuff around specific training events, which take a bit longer. But that is obviously a bigger investment from the company's time point of view. And therefore, the speaking bit is a big plus up front. You can get a pretty clear message across very quickly. So that's my primary focus over the next few years, is to really mainstream more of that.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Are there any clear like objectives that you're working towards to be able to hit those outcomes?
I'm doing a lot more in terms of looking at how I kind of open the aperture to get more potential clients in. I think one of the others, it's a learning point as well, if you like, to your challenges question earlier, that it's easy. I've got a very big network. I've got a lot of contacts, a lot of senior contacts who are in great positions. There is a risk, I think, you look at your contacts and you think they'll be great, they'll be able to help me. The reality is, obviously, sometimes they can, and they're always very useful sources of advice. But in terms of, do they actually generate you work? Not necessarily. So I think having the kind of moral courage and confidence to reach out much more broadly to more people who you don't necessarily know, who you've got to turn around and build a relationship with to actually get yourself a decent chance is really important. And so there's a volume game, definitely. And in terms of the forward direction for where I'm going, if you're looking at the 2 to 3 year horizon, I absolutely am looking to significantly increase that in the UK and overseas, and just try and find now I've got a pretty tight niche of stuff that I'm doing. I want to try and really focus on that and deliver in that space.
That's amazing, man. It's amazing. Well, Bob, for people that are looking to get in touch with you, learn a little bit more about what you do, or even get your help, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, thanks. You're right. It's really important to do it, as I've already said. I mean, I think my website, which is leadingforlife.co.uk, will give anybody the contact details and all the rest of it. You can find me very easily on LinkedIn. Just look up Bob Judson. You'll find me there. You'll find my podcast. If you look on any of the podcast platforms, it's called Leading for Life Stories. And you'll find that either on pretty much any podcast platform or on YouTube. So all the ones for the last year, I think, have been on video as well as on audio. So any of those mechanisms will work well. And my phone number's on there as well. Just pick the phone up, give me a call.
Amazing, amazing. Well, Bob, thank you so much for being on the show, and I definitely recommend everyone checking out Bob on different places he mentioned, from his website to LinkedIn, phone number, email, all those things. So, Bob, thank you for taking the time out on today to be on the show and just sharing your wisdom and experience through quite a very leadership-led career in business that you've had. So, thank you so much for being on the show.
Appreciate pleasure, Jason. Delighted to have joined you. Thanks very much indeed. Really appreciate the opportunity.
Fantastic. And as a reminder to everyone listening, the show is sponsored by the LinkedIn Reverse Podcast Method, the new way established businesses are creating a reliable acquisition channel of conversations with their ideal prospects that doesn't rely on any of the old, ineffective traditional marketing methods that everybody hates. To find out more, direct message me on LinkedIn to have a chat. The show notes to that will be in, or the link to that will be in the show notes below. And until next episode, stay inspired.